Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to watch 90 Day Fiancé. I'm excited. Are you excited? Let's hunker down and watch this show and see if anything of interest comes out of my face. Comment below as well. I read the comments and I make episodes when I do read your comments. So let me know what you think after I say what I think.
I would really like to get that done today or tomorrow. Yeah. My name is Stephanie, and I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan. I am right now training to do the Guinness Book of World Records Hula Hoop Championship, which is 100 hours.
Interesting. A brand new person. We haven't seen her yet. I'm so curious. I always start off so optimistic with these people, I'm realizing. I see someone, I'm like, oh, you look like a nice individual. Let's hear your story. Often I'm blindsided with some information, like last week when it came to, I can't remember his name now, but he seemed like a nice guy, and then we learned later from his girlfriend that he might have some very concerning behaviors. But anyway, let's keep our hopes up, and maybe this person we can rally behind. Let's watch.
99.9% into my business, so dating has not been at the top of my list. I have never wanted to get married in my life, and I chose not to have children because of the tumultuous childhood I had, that's for sure.
Okay, interesting. As you know, I'm always appreciative of learning at least some details of the individual's past. And for this person, Stephanie is her name, right? She is saying that she had a very difficult childhood. Okay, I'm guessing a lot of the people on the show have at least had some difficulty, if not a lot of difficulty. When we think of people like Colt, we just have to wonder what his childhood was like. We never heard anything as far as I know. And then for her, she is saying she had a difficult childhood and she never wanted to get married. She says in part due to the difficult childhood that I had. So interesting detail. Let's continue watching.
When I was growing up, my dad suffered from bipolar disorder, so it's very tough when you wake up in the morning and you're not sure if you're going to be loved by your father that day or hated by your father that day. It wasn't his fault. Bipolar disorder it's a chemical imbalance in the brain. He couldn't help that.
So right away, I'm impressed with her vulnerability, with her self-awareness, with her ability to say, you know what, I was affected by this and I was treated badly, but thinking about it, it wasn't even his fault. I mean, he didn't have any control over his disorder. So bipolar disorder, how could that affect your parenting? Well, there's a lot of different presentations of bipolar, but there are some speculations that I could throw out there. Bipolar is characterized by long periods, usually long periods of depression with short periods of mania. And the long periods of depression, you can be very down, low motivation, bad mood, no pleasure in anything, feeling very pessimistic, maybe suicidal. And that's going to impair your ability to take care of your kids. You're not going to have motivation to take care of your kids. You're going to try to avoid it. You're going to feel like you're a terrible parent. You're going to feel very ashamed of yourself. You're going to have a hard time just even getting out of bed, maybe. And you're just trying to survive minute to minute. Then you have these periods of mania where you start to believe that you can do anything, that you have very high self-esteem, you might have a ton of energy, and you might do a lot of changes in your life, and you might be very exciting. You could imagine as you ramp up in mania that you might actually have some good parenting skills. You might have a lot of energy to play with the kids and take care of the kids. That would be very confusing to a child to be suddenly paid attention to as the individual heads into hypomania. But then full-blown mania, the person is sometimes not necessarily connected to reality. They might be delusional. They might stay up for days. They might be very confused. They might have way too much energy. They might suddenly believe that they can do anything and they waste all their money and all these dubious investments. They might start to have an affair because it's like, I'm going to leave this family behind me. Just a lot of possibilities that could affect one's parenting. And then you cycle enough times. And then, of course, when you're medicated, that carries with it a side effect profile usually, because bipolar medications usually have a fair amount of side effects ongoing. So even if you're getting treatment, it can impair your parenting in some ways. Now, I will say that some people on medication with bipolar will have no symptoms and pretty low profile of side effects on their medication, and they can do wonderful work as parents. So having a label of bipolar does not necessarily mean that you're not going to do well as a parent by any means. There's a lot of different presentations, but a lot of people with bipolar go untreated, at least for spans of time. So you cycle enough times, starting at the age, it starts in late teenage, early 20s, and it gets worse and worse. So the amplitude gets worse and worse. And by the time you're 30 or 28, you're having some pretty wild swings between depression and mania. And you might even be dipping into psychosis and delusion. When you do that cycle over and over and over again, your relationships tend to suffer. People around you tend to back away from you because they remember what you did the last time you were very depressed or the last time you were very manic. And so that affects you emotionally because people are moving away from you. People are rejecting you. And you feel very sad and your attachment needs aren't being met and you feel rejected and you get real angry about it and you feel alone, and then that affects your parenting as well. You might turn to substances. You might turn to other kinds of vices. There's a lot of different possibilities, but I could imagine at least some of this being true for, I keep forgetting her name here, I wrote it down, Stephanie. And at the very least, she's saying that his bipolar affected his parenting. And she's saying that she wasn't sure when she was going to be loved and when she wasn't. Let's rewind that and hear, I think it's an important phrase for us to pay attention to.
When I was growing up, my dad suffered from bipolar disorder, so it's very tough when you wake up in the morning and you're not sure if you're going to be loved by your father that day or hated by your father that day.
She's saying that on some days she would be loved and on other days she would be hated, or at least she would feel as though she was being hated. And that can happen with people that have bipolar. Now, it's possible that if we were to talk to him or talk to other people around, they would say, well, yeah, he suffered from bipolar, but he wasn't hateful. But when you're 2, 3 years old and you're being completely ignored, like another scenario that is similar to this is when you have a parent who's just depressed. So let's say they're not bipolar. They're in bed all day long. And the kids are running around and the kids knock on the bedroom door and say, hey, daddy or mommy or whoever, hey, are you in there? And then the parent is like, not right now, honey, I'm trying to take a nap. Or finally you break through and you get in there and the parent tries to give it their all, but they're just like, they might be suicidal. They might be self-medicating. They might be very depressed and have a hard time just interacting with anyone. So you can imagine as a child interfacing with that, you might interpret that as they hate me. That's why they're not getting out of bed to take care of me. Or that's why they seem so intoxicated that they're not giving me attention right now. And you would interpret that as a child as they hate me. Now, it's also possible that her father was abusive physically as well. Now, I want to be clear that people with bipolar aren't necessarily abusive. That those two things don't necessarily go hand in hand. The other thing is that when you suffer from bipolar, it is associated with childhood trauma. And so when you are traumatized as a child, you might both develop a bipolar, might sort of exacerbate the development of bipolar, and you were modeled a sort of parenting style that involved abuse as well. Anyway, I'm just speculating. Let's continue watching.
It wasn't his fault. Bipolar disorder it's a chemical imbalance in the brain. He couldn't help that, but it's definitely shaped me as a person.
I had an emotionally unstable environment growing up, so I built emotional walls to protect myself.
Baby doll, come see mama.
So she said that she's built up emotional walls to protect herself. I want to commend her for that. So has anyone on the show said anything like that before? I'm usually speculating about those sorts of things. I can't think of a single person. I'm sure there's someone in there somewhere that I've watched. That is great. That kind of awareness, that kind of humility, that kind of acknowledgement of your own personality. We all have those tendencies. We all have defenses.
He has a phenomenal personality. He's extremely funny. I feel something about Ryan that I haven't felt for others in the past. After dating for 3 years and flying to Belize every 2 to 3 months, we took the next step and applied for the K-1 visa.
So just some interesting details that she's giving us, that she has never really wanted to get married. And at the age of, I believe she's 52, I'm not quite sure, she went to Belize and she met someone and became friends with, they were friends. And then she comes back and she says, oh, you know what, I'm still thinking about this guy. She goes back to Belize, and that's when they became a couple. And then she comes back to the United States, and now she wants to apply for a K-1 visa. So what's going on there? Why the sudden change in her desires for her life? Is it that she finally met the right one? That's certainly possible. Sometimes it takes a long time. I talk about this all the time. People will be like 22 years old and they'll ask me, I give up on dating because I've had a few disasters and I'm 22 years old. I should have been able to meet the right person by now. And I'm always like, no. Sometimes you got to go through a lot of duds before you find the right one. And sometimes you have to go through so many duds that you are 52 by the time you meet the right one. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's fine. It happens all the time. So maybe it just took her a long time to find the right one. That's certainly possible. It kind of seems that way to me. Or is it something else? Is it her getting older and she wants to settle down finally? Maybe it's a part of that. I'm going to assume it's the first one, that it just took her a long time to find the right one. The other speculation I'll have is that she is feeling a lot of attraction to him because he doesn't live in her town. When she dates people in her town, the relationship is free to progress as in the normal way, meaning that you have date 1 and date 10 and date 25. And usually for her at some point, she's like, I'm out. But with someone that lives in another country, it impedes that process and it stretches out that initial butterfly feeling that we get, that infatuation feeling that we get in the beginning of a relationship that she might interpret as, I'm in love with this person. I've never felt this way with anyone before. And that could be a product of just the long distance nature of the beginning of the relationship. That's something I'll throw out as well. Of course, I have no idea. But like I said, I'm going to assume it's the first one. It just took her a long time to find the right one. And she thinks she might have found the right one. We'll find out together, I'm guessing.
So still haven't heard from Ryan. I don't know what's going on right now. The challenges of being in a long distance relationship are the trust issues. Especially when you date someone who's 27 years old. You wonder what they're doing when he doesn't answer his phone.
Totally speculating here, but I'm always looking for signs of someone's attachment style. And one tiny, tiny little yellow flag for preoccupied attachment is that statement of, why isn't he answering my phone? I just texted her. Why isn't she texting me back? Why doesn't she ever ask me to have date night? I'm always the one asking her for date night, those kinds of thoughts. Now, there's nothing wrong with feeling that way and asserting yourself. There's nothing wrong with going, where is he? I thought he said he was going to call me. There is something indicative of anxious or preoccupied attachment if it's a frequent feeling that you're having and it's hard to navigate that between the two people. But so I'm not going to assume anything, but let's just note that and see if that's an indication of things to come.
I get worried when I don't hear from Ryan, but I call his mom because I know he checks in with his mom every day. I kind of look at Dorla as my mother-in-law already, even though I'm 5 years older than she is. I mean, I kind of feel like she's had more life experience than I have because she's raised 7 children.
So people who live in Michigan, is that a Michigan accent? She has a very distinct accent to my ears. And I just want to know from people who know the Michigan accent, I can't tell if it's a Michigan thing or just the way she talks, or maybe she originated from another region or something, but she has a very distinct way of talking. Let me know in the comments if this is Michigan accent or a particular region in Michigan.
He said he was okay, but he was a bit painy with aches and pains from working. So he was okay.
Okay. When the borders are open before the coronavirus, I would see Ryan 3, 4, 5 times a year. Now that the coronavirus has hit, I have not seen him for 9 months.
All right, interesting. So another detail. She's saying that before the lockdown, she was able to see him 3 or 4 times a year. That's encouraging. That means they've seen each other a lot. A lot of people on this show, they will have met one time only for like a week. And now they're moving ahead with the K-1 visa. The person comes to the United States and it's all a disaster because they didn't really know each other and they aren't compatible. So the fact that she's been involved with him for, it sounds like at least a year, maybe longer, and she's had multiple in-person meetings with him is a good sign for things to come for these two.
I have not seen him for 9 months. It's very frustrating because we are definitely losing connection to each other.
Yes, research actually shows that. I did a whole deep dive on long-distance relationships earlier this year, or last year actually. You can listen to that. And one of the research findings is that relationships that have at least once a month in-person meetings are more likely to be long-lasting than relationships where you don't see each other as often. There's something about being in the same room and breathing the same air and being able to hug each other and being able to have intimacy, physical intimacy. Because when you're over video chat, you can't have eye contact. I mean, just think about how important eye contact is. That's why I look right into this lens when I talk, because I want to have eye contact with you. When I'm on Zoom, I actually don't look at the camera. I'm looking at people as I'm talking. So imagine the whole time I'm talking like this, da-da-da-da-da. It doesn't feel quite right, right? We need to have eye contact. We need to be in the same room. Research shows that if you see each other at least once a month in person, even if it's just for a day, then that helps. Now, can you be in a successful relationship, meaning it lasts for a long time, and not see each other very often? Sure, but it lowers the chances. So she's reflecting what the research shows. And 9 months is a long time to not be able to see each other.
I think he really likes this new job, do you?
I think so too. It keeps him busy and out of trouble and everything.
Yes, that's exactly my intention too.
Now, I'm going to take a guess and say that the viewers of this show are going to consider this scene to be creepy. She's already called herself a cougar. She's called him a cub because, you know, cougar and cub, and so the mother-son thing. She is now having an in-depth conversation with his mom. They're both talking about him like he is a child. I don't know what people are saying, but I'm guessing people are saying. I'm not saying they're talking about him as if he's a child, but I'm guessing that's what people are going to say. So if that is what people are saying, which that's just a guess based on previous video reactions and reading people's comments, what would I have to say about that? One, there's nothing wrong with Stephanie saying, I'm having a hard time reaching Ryan. You know what? I'll reach out to a family member. There's nothing wrong with that. There's also nothing wrong with Stephanie saying, if I'm going to move forward with this relationship with this guy, I need to get to know his family and he needs to get to know my family. You know, when I always talk about this, when you marry someone, you don't just marry them, you marry their entire world and they marry your entire world. And integrating those things are very important. This is why we ceremonialize weddings a lot, is because we're trying to, on that day of that ceremony, we're saying we are marrying these two people and also we're combining these two worlds. Maybe that's what she's doing. How could this be pathological? Let me think about this for a second. If Stephanie actually does look down on Ryan and consider him to be less important or less mature or someone that she is above, like an overfunctioner of some kind, then that could lend itself for her to reach out to his mother as a way of trying to, hey, let's talk woman to woman, because I'm guessing they're of similar age, by the way. And let's talk about this because, you know, we both have concerns about the young man, the young boy. There's a little bit of a tinge of that here. I don't want to jump to that conclusion, but if that was happening, then the relationship between the two of them, if it has that rigidity of overfunctioner, underfunctioner, or mommy and child, and it's rigid that way, then that doesn't usually bode well because neither person is really getting their intimate needs met. You know, in order for us to have our romantic and sexual needs met, we need to be on the same level at least some of the time. There's nothing wrong with switching roles, like someone is sick and so you take care of them, or someone is sad because their family member died and you take care of them. Someone's freaking out about taxes and you take care of them. The other person is stressed out about money and you take care of them. You know, there's nothing wrong. There should be that kind of role flexibility in switching. It's just when it's always one way, then neither person gets the full range of their emotional needs met, and it ends up feeling bad to you. It ends up feeling bad for both people. It feels bad for the underfunctioner because they feel incompetent, and it feels bad for the overfunctioner because they feel like they always have to take responsibility.
If you hear from Ryan, please let him know that I did try to get a hold of him.
Okay, honey, I'll do that.
Okay, I love you.
Love you too.
All right.
I want to say that this is at least some measure of a good sign. We've seen other families where there's a huge amount of animosity from the beginning, or it develops as the season progresses. The fact that she and one of his family members, an important family member, the fact that they get along and that they communicate is a wonderful thing. 2 thumbs up for that. It's possible it's a sign of the overfunctioning issue. We don't have any evidence of that, but let's monitor that as we continue watching. If you haven't become a patron of the podcast yet, that's how we know you like the show. Please become a patron if you want. You don't have to, no pressure. But if you have been thinking about it for a while, just go to your phone or go to your computer, go to patreon.com, go to Psychology in Seattle, become a patron. It would really mean a lot to me. And please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.